Yo, why does that statue look kind of funky, bro? Yo, that guy looks kind of similar to statue. Hello everybody, welcome to Trussell Talks, your unscheduled entertainment on Minecraft lore that you might find interesting. Since the release of the Warden and the Deep Dark, there have been many theories as to the backstory. I mean, we even know that there's lore behind the Warden, but what could this lore possibly be? You guys need to stay for this, because there's a lot to cover. In this video, we're going to figure out what is the purpose of the ancient cities, what is a warden, and how does it fit in the complex lore of Minecraft. When the player comes across the ancient city, they see a lot. Massive portal-esque structures, towering outposts, and wool paths covering the walkways? Let's start with where they spawn. Ancient cities have the highest chance of spawning under areas with a low erosion value, or how flat the terrain is. Low values indicate higher or more varied elevation, which is why ancient cities are most commonly found under biomes such as jagged peaks and meadows. Because of the massive mountains and varied terrain that cities spawn under, I've come to the conclusion that ancient cities were never completely underground. I believe they stretched far into the sky, and with years that have gone by, the structures have eroded in various ways, resulting in jagged peaks that used to be massive skyscrapers, or plateaus that formed after collapsed buildings. The rubble that forms these mountains consequently hid the lowest sections of ancient cities, resulting in the structures we know today. I'm not gonna lie, this is an insane headcanon, but I've been playing way too many post-apocalyptic games and skyscrapers basically turn into mountains in them, so that's what I'm going with. What is the point of the wool on the floors? Almost every single walkway has wool as its material, so why does it exist? We know that wool is one of the quietest blocks to walk on. With the numerous sculk sensors around ancient cities and the deep dark biome itself, it's important to highlight that the wool may have been used to avoid sculk sensors being activated, as when they detect sound, they can activate sculk shriekers, and that's another can of worms. Directly from the wiki, wool is known to block vibrations from reaching nearby sculk sensors. If wool surrounds sculk sensors and a sound is made near it, the wool will block sound vibrations such as footsteps. This gives us more information about ancient cities. It's also important to highlight that every ancient city spawns in the deep dark, but not every deep dark has an ancient city. Why is that? The deep dark has many important properties, not the least of which being to summon the warden. The deep dark is only found in very low, near bedrock regions of worlds, thereby suggesting that those who constructed the cities were trying to hide from something. In addition to that, the size of the cities suggests that they were supposed to be long-term, massive compounds, inspired by the Mayan temples and Roman ruins of our time. Obviously, the ancient builders were the race that constructed these cities. With their massive buildings in the Nether, their advanced technological capability, and their ability to access other dimensions, we can draw a conclusion that the ancient builders were originally the ones who created the cities. This also lines up with the years of erosion I discussed earlier, about how the cities eroded to create the towering mountains and plateaus. Only time could erode structures, and as we know the fate of the ancient builders, check out my end video after this for more information, these cities had to have been uninhabited, resulting in that erosion. Anyway, enough about rocks changing shape. Only ancient builders lived in these cities, not illagers, not villagers, and definitely not the wardens. Do you think this goofy mob can build these massive cities? What about the loot in these chests? We can find numerous things in each loot chest. I'll put them up on the screen. However, we should pay attention to one specific item that we can find in the chests: snowballs. Snowballs can be used to distract or direct the warden from approaching the player, and can redirect sculk sensors. It makes sense that the ancient builders would use snowballs, because they wouldn't want to distract or alert the warden. Why do the sculk sensors and shriekers even exist? These two blocks are insanely dangerous when combined, so humans can't have made them, since if they did, their end would have occurred much sooner. These two blocks must be a naturally occurring part of Minecraft. It seems redundant to call them that, since the player can only find them in the wild, but in the context of Minecraft lore, it's necessary to place them as naturally occurring. Electric signals in the real world, similar to redstone, can occur through natures, in ways such as lightning, and even the neurons in your brain transmit electric signals. Even in Minecraft, we can find naturally occurring redstone signals. Through lightning, like the real world obviously, daylight sensors, which is a form of solar energy, though this can be argued since it's a man-made signal because of the daylight sensors, and the aforementioned sculk sensors. Now that we've established the fact that sculk sensors are naturally occurring, we can discuss the hidden redstone circuits under the city structure. There are 3 different layouts to the basements. Each of the layouts use a sculk sensor in some type of way, whether it be waterlogged, surrounded by glass, or surrounded by wool. All of them operate a piston door. This could be the place where the ancient builders conducted their experiments in regards to the sculk sensor as a way to determine its uses. We need to discuss the sculk growth. When mobs die near a sculk catalyst, the sculk spreads. When I was testing the lengths of how far the sculk would spread, I found that after letting the game run for 10 minutes at a rate of 10,000 ticks, it spread out to an approximate radius of 100 blocks from the catalyst. It's important to note that this is a really rough approximation. The sculk spread exponentially, but then its growth slowed. A really cool video by Natawi describes a theoretical model he created using concepts of Brownian notion. I have zero clue how this works, but I will attach the video below in the description. The equation he created is on the screen. RMS is a root mean square value. Delta represents the movement of the cursor, or the direction of the sculk spreading, as a 2-dimensional vector. Tau represents the time in ticks. This essentially represents the RMS distance of the spread, which is also proportional to time. He also simplified this by stating that if it takes 10 seconds to reach 10 blocks, it'll take 40 seconds to reach 20 blocks. I know I explained this super poorly and may have gotten some stuff wrong, so if you are interested in how Natawi developed this model, I highly recommend you check out his video linked in the description. Moving back into Minecraft lore, there is something seen in every single ancient city that players have questioned. We see pillager outposts like ruins, dark oak bridges lining old catwalks, and even the light and dark blue wool rooms similar to the rooms in the woodland mansions. Numerous people have suggested that the Pillagers created the city and thereby created the Warden. However, that is not the case at all. Looking at each of the dark oak structures, we see that almost 0 sculk have taken over the structure, unlike this ancient city. In addition, the wool sites are called camps, suggesting temporary structures. And looking at the outposts, they look like they were built on top of the ruins rather than integrated with them. The bridges are used to connect the dilapidated ruins together, like an archaeology site, instead of being part of the original structure. The different colored wool carpets also point to this being a fact, since it appears Pillagers are following the example set by the ancient builders in regards to walkways. Also, instead of using wool blocks like the ancient builders, Pillagers use wool carpets, different colored carpets at that, which proves that they were not the original inhabitants. We have to talk about the elephant in the room, the Warden. Probably the main highlight of this biome. This massive lumbering mob is spawned when the player activates a sculk shrieker 3 or more times. This mob looks horrifying, with bone outwardly protruding from his structure, and a deep, pulsing blue mystery from the cavity in his chest. In fact, the Warden is one of the first mobs that the devs have confirmed that there is actual lore for. Looking at early concept art and development of the Warden, we see that the Warden was called Hollowed, and Sculk were called Hollow. We notice that, despite every variation of the Warden, from Enderman-esque beings to wither-like organisms, they all have one thing consistent, the core. Each of these concepts of the Warden have a core or some centerpiece that implies some major significance within Minecraft lore. In addition, looking at other concept art, we can see different variations of the Warden overtaken by the Hollow or Sculk. We can thus infer that the Sculk caused the Warden to become hollowed out, creating that cavity in its chest. By the way, the pulsing cavity in the chest are souls, confirmed by developer King B Dogs. The soul's pulse, much like a heartbeat, speeds up as the Warden becomes more agitated, which can be seen as mimicking the player's increasingly anxious heartbeat. The hunched over, lumbering gait that the Warden has also implies it is a loose mass of bones, held together by the sculk that overtook it. This also begs the question, how do we know the Warden's made out of bones? We know that when mobs are killed on a sculk catalyst, the sculk begins to spread. We can also assume that almost every mob has some type of skeletal structure. When the Warden is summoned, I believe that the sculk pulls together a horrifying mass of bone from various mobs, connecting them together via sculk, and the Warden is born through that. This is furthered on with the swirling mass of souls contained within the Shrieker, implying that the energy of the souls is gathered and pushed into the Warden as it is created, acting as a life source for the Warden. The anger and agitation that the Warden has is directly caused by the trapped souls within his chest, those souls wishing they can escape their entrapment and move on to their next life. This is why the developers encourage the player not to kill the Warden, as it serves no point. The Warden doesn't drop anything. It isn't aggressive on one person as soon as it detects them. In fact, in the wiki, the Warden is known to track down suspicious targets rather than ones close to it. It's just a guardian of the deep dark. But why? Why would the ancient builders choose to set up their lives in an area that has the ability to eliminate them? They needed a guardian. The Warden, with its massive power, unknowingly became a protector for the ancient builders, because they had to escape from a horror that was terrorizing the world above. The Plague. While some builders attempted to escape to another dimension, others chose to go deep underground to the depths of the world and discovered the power of the deep dark. They built massive fortresses stretching from the underground to the sky, trying to figure out how to survive in this world of madness. If you thought the Wardens were solely anti-player, you are mistaken. Wardens are known to attack almost every other mob because a Warden doesn't discriminate. Anything it sees as an invasion or attack, it will destroy. This is the reason why the ancient builders chose to build in the deep dark. They knew Wardens could protect them from this plague, as it began to infect the depths of the world. They knew that this being has otherworldly powers that could save them. They knew that they could experiment in peace and quiet, knowing this being would protect them from the plague. The builders who chose to travel to the deep dark constructed these cities, knowing they would have to be here for years. Constructing creature comforts like saunas and barracks, developing a massive city center, creating freezers through ice boxes to store food, all in an effort to make their lives easier as they began to live out the end of their lives. Under the city center were the laboratories, where they experimented with sculk, trying to determine its properties to see if it can help them with their builds. But finally, the plague reached the deep dark and the builders' cities. As the builders fought against their old family, friends, and co-workers, the chaos and sounds that were being created resulted in the Warden rising up from the sculk. The builders rejoiced, knowing they would be safe from the plague, as the Warden fought off the hordes of infected. However, after the battle was won, the builders' idea of the Warden shifted. They began to believe in the powers of the Warden, treating it as a deity that saved them from the horrors of the world above. Despite their treatment of the Warden, they were scared of it. They couldn't risk angering it, or the wrath of the Warden would turn onto them. They began trying to appease the Warden, constructing massive statues in the centers of cities, and began sacrificing their population to strengthen the Warden. By choice or by force, one by one, the city population began to dwindle, as builders were sacrificed to make the sculk spread and make the sculk more powerful. This reached a point where the sculk nearly enveloped the entire city. Those that remained constructed wool walkways to be able to quietly move around the infested city, careful not to anger the existing Warden or summon new ones. The angry souls of builders, sacrificed, coursed through the sculk veins, and the sounds of shriekers directly draws from the angry cries of the captured souls. The Warden, when spawned, holds the souls of those sacrificed in its chest, fueling its anger and agitation towards those that make sound. More builders were sacrificed to try to quell the anger of the Warden, but it didn't work. The population of the city eventually drained, with one final builder existing in the city. That builder sacrificed themselves, a last-ditch effort to try to appease the Warden. Their soul joined the souls of the fallen before them, swirling in the streakers, coursing through the sculk veins, pulsing in the Warden. This final act of sacrifice ends the builder population, the last one to see the overworld before their species was extinguished.